Hi, this video is all about how the media can affect our decision-making processes in society. By the end of this video, you should be able to understand how mass media affects the decisions of the public, specifically the consumers, producers, and policymakers that kind of make the world go round. So by now, it should be pretty clear to you that media can have both positive and negative effects on everyone. Media should be a net neutral. It should be ultimately unbiased and giving us the truth to make the decisions that we need. To understand how this works, you first have to understand the three important groups of people that we're talking about, okay? These are consumers, producers, and policymakers, all right? So that's what we're going to be focused on here. First, we have the consumers, and whether you know it or not, you are probably a consumer. Consumers are just people who purchase and use items in the world around us, right? The public. Consumers drive the economy through their individual decisions. So they often find various forms of media to be very helpful in making those decisions, right? Think of the way that commercials help let us know the products that are on the market to purchase. Or the way that people can write reviews on different products or organizations on social media to let other people know, right? So in this way, media can have a really positive effect on driving the decisions of consumers in society. But it can also, like most things, have a negative effect. Because while media can give consumers more options and more information, it can also be used to spread incorrect information, which I think that we all know. And that is something that consumers really need to be aware of before they kind of take things at face value, right? If there's nothing else you learn here, it's to question everything. Biases and partisan opinions are common features of the media landscape. When those forms of mass media, driving our decision-making processes, consumers might make their purchasing decisions based on bad advice, right? So we want to make sure that we are educated and that we kind of fact-check the information that we get. The next group of people that we're talking about here are the producers. And the producers are the people who are selling items into the market for purchase. And media also affects the decision-making processes of producers. For one, the type of media producers can access might influence their knowledge of government policies, trends, global economy, stock rates, consumer habits, right? So all of those things are going to help them to make their decisions. So if they have better access to media, it might mean that they have more access to information that can help them survive in a competitive market, right? If you think of this kind of on a global scale, it kind of explains why countries like the United States that have, free-flowing information and freedom of information tend to do a lot better in the global marketplace than countries that restrict the flow of information. Because when companies don't have a free flow of information, then they don't have the ability to compete, in the global marketplace. But media can also be used by producers to control information about their product, right? So if you think again about, commercials, social media accounts, often the producers in society are using those forms of media, using those media channels to bring information about their products to the public. So in both of those ways, it's really, really important for the producers, the people who sell items to the consumers, right, to be well-informed and be able to use the media to their advantage. But again, there are negative effects because producers are highly incentivized, right? Incentivized means they receive reward from. They're highly incentivized to hide the negative details about their product and focus on the positive details of their product. So if we are relying on the producers themselves to provide us information, then we may not always be getting the full picture, right? Which is why journalists are so important, because they are free of those, incentives to share one type of information over another. And then, of course, we have the policymakers. And policymakers are the government officials who create political and economic policies in our society. And just like the other groups, media outlets let policymakers both receive and distribute information, right? So if we consider the information that policymakers receive, policymakers in general want their policies to be successful, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be active in government. They want the things that they decide to be successful out in the world. That's just what the job is. Mass media can give those policymakers the information that they need to make educated policy decisions, as well as interpret kind of the overall mood or sentiment of the public, right? They can determine whether people support a policy or oppose it. They can determine how people feel about them and their policies, right? So receiving all of that information is really important to those people who create policies for our society. But at the same time, policymakers can also distribute information. So they both receive and distribute, just like consumers and just like the producers. Policymakers are members of the political body. They have agendas that they're trying to get out. And so they may want to distribute messaging that kind of aligns with their policies and their framework for what they believe, right? So they can use media and mass media to send out messages that support what they are trying to do. That is how media affects our decision making in a nutshell, right? Consumers, producers, and policymakers can all send and receive messages. They receive and distribute messages through mass media. Both have benefits and negative effects. Ideally, all three of these groups would share information equally, to better understand each other, to make the wisest collective decisions, because all of these groups are really dependent on each other. They are interdependent, right? They are, the success of one group depends on the success of the other groups. But unfortunately, people in each category sometimes use media to, manipulate information for their own benefit. So if you are making decisions, whether you're a consumer, producer, or policymaker, good decisions are always about education, right? They are about knowing, being able to fact check, finding that information that is true and real and will actually help you in making those decisions. And mass media makes that a possibility for everyone, right? It makes it possible for anyone to do the legwork as long as they're willing to put in the time so that they can make good decisions. And that's why this is so, so, so important. Thank you very much for listening to me, and have a great day.